Well, now we're going to go on with the wiring of the bookcase. And for some of you, this may be your first exposure to this sort of stuff. Some of you may be familiar, but it really is quite straightforward. And the first thing I want to do is to assure you that it's also very low risk. Now, while dealing with 240 volts AC currents from the main is dangerous and something that an electrician should do, what you'll be dealing with today is very much low voltage. So the 240 volts is converted by the power supply into 12 volts of DC current, and the 12 volt DC current that you'll be dealing with is very safe. The sort of current that you'd have basically in a torch. It's that sort of level. So let me just show you that this, I've plugged the power supply in, I've turned it on, and I'll just show you that it's live. So if I just touch the terminals here to an LED, well, it's the wrong way around. So you can see the lights coming on. So this is now live with 12 volts of current. And now I'm going to hold it in my fingers and I don't even feel a tingle. Okay, so what you're going to deal with today is very low voltage and very low risk. There is really no risk of electrocution in what you're doing today. So that's the first thing. I just wanted to reassure you that everything was going to be safe for you to deal with. Now I've got all of my parts and my tools here laid out ready to go. So what have I got? I've got my wire, of course. I'm going to need that to get all of the LED leads into the top box and connected to the terminal block. I've got my switch. Now the switch is included in the kit. You don't necessarily need to fit it if you don't want to. If you're happy to switch the bookcase or wine rack on and off at the wall, you're not going to need this. If you want to have it permanently connected and on at the wall and then turn it on and off at the bookcase or wine rack, then you need to fit the switch. Now I'm going to fit the switch, but that's entirely up to you. So we've got our switch. We've got a terminal block just to make it easy to connect everything together. That's included, and I'll show you how to wire that up as we go. Now I've got my 4 LED top lamp, and I've got my LED strips. I've got 2 short strips for the side lights and 1 long one for the front light box. Now all of these, everybody knows they're called LEDs, and it stands for light emitting diode. But what is a diode? Well, a diode is an electronic component that only allows current to flow in one direction. So if you connect this up incorrectly, nothing will happen. Power must flow in the correct direction. So I'll just show you that. So if I touch these leads to the 2 terminals here, now I've got red on the positive and black on the negative. Nothing is happening. I reverse them. Black on the positive, red on the negative, and the diode works. So we're going to have to be very careful that we make sure we get all of our polarities right today, because with a diode, if you don't correct it in the correct polarity, then it won't work. Okay, so we've got a little bit of heat shrink, and then we've got our tools. Now we are going to need our solder and our soldering iron. I've got here my wire strippers. I've got a couple of little tools like a screwdriver and a pair of clippers for cutting the wire. And I've also got my multimeter. Now I find it very handy to use this. You could probably survive without this, just doing exactly what I'm doing here with the power supply turned on, because using this system I can easily see that in this particular case red is negative, because if I connect red to negative, black to positive, it works on that LED. Red to negative, black to positive, it works on that LED. So you can probably survive without the multimeter. I like to have it because it's handy to use. Now the first thing I'm going to do today is to fit the switch. Now there's no preset position for the switch. You can basically have it anywhere that you like. I've put it into the top flaps, and today I'm going to put it down here onto this panel here. So I'm going to put the switch around about here, I think. You could put it here on this side wall as well if you wanted to, just bearing in mind though that there is the spacer on the inside, so you probably need to plan that ahead. But you can basically put the switch anywhere you like in the top box, and today I'm going to put mine in here. Now the first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to make up a template so I know how to cut the hole and cut the hole correctly. So what I've done here is I've got a piece of scrap material. I've measured the switch and I've marked out where I'm going to cut my hole. I'm going to cut my hole in my template, and then I'm going to clamp the template on here and use that to cut the hole for the switch in the top assembly. So let's go ahead and cut a hole in the template. And there we have it, the switch is now nicely fitted into the hole we made with the template on the top assembly. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to fit the top assembly loosely on top of the bookcase, and we're going to wire up the switch. Now the switch only has to go into one side of the circuit. All it's got to do is break the circuit. So what I've done here is I've threaded the two leads of the power supply up into the top box. I've got the black lead going into the box, and I've poked a loop of the red lead up through the switch hole. And I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to put the two ends of this onto my switch. Now, as we did in the socket for the side assembly, I'm going to cut a couple of little bits of heat shrink here, fit them to the wires, and then we'll shrink them down once we've fitted the wires to the switch. And that's the switch fitted. Next thing we're going to do is put that power into the terminal block. Now before I put the power into the terminal block, I'm just going to prepare the terminal block before I fit it, and I'm doing it here so you can see what I'm doing. And the first thing is it's just a standard terminal block, and I don't need all of it. So I'm going to trim it down a little bit, and what I have is I have 4 LEDs, so I'm going to have 4 red leads and 4 black leads, and each one wants to be connected to something. So I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 terminals. That's all I'm going to need, so I'm just going to discard this part here. Now I want all 4 of these terminals to be positive and all 4 of these terminals to be negative. And my power is going to come into one of those, my positive and my negative, but what I want to do is bridge all of these together so that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 positive terminals and 1, 2, 3, 4 negative terminals for the LEDs to attach to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fit little loops here, and then finally I'll bring the power into one of them, which means that all of these terminals will be either positive or negative. So let's do that. Okay, now I've made up all my bridging loops, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my red power lead into here in the top box and my black power lead into here in the top box, and what that then will mean is I'll have 4 terminals, 1 for each side, 4 terminals for positive, 4 terminals for negative for the LEDs to connect to, and I'm going to screw this down inside the top box assembly. So now we've actually got power into the top box via the switch, and the terminal block is fitted waiting for the LEDs. So we're actually ready to fit the LEDs. Now you will notice as I went through I was tinning the wires with the soldering iron that go into the terminal block. You don't have to do that, that's just something that I do just to make it a little bit neater. Okay, now we want to fit the LEDs, but before we can fit the LEDs we actually have to line out the light boxes with the aluminium foil self-adhesive that came in your kit. And the idea of this stuff is so that the light fills the whole chamber and illuminates your sign nicely. Now this stuff is really, really sticky. So if you're not careful it will stick to itself, you will get lots of creases and it will be difficult to fit unless you follow my process, which through a bit of practice, what I do is I just peel one corner and then I fold it down. Okay, so now I can use this to position the entire piece where it's supposed to go. Once I've done that, I push down on the corner that I peeled back. Then I can unroll the rest of the backing paper and the sheet will go on nicely without a crease. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out all of the lining of the light boxes ready for the LEDs. Now that's all the light boxes now lined with the aluminium foil. Now it is aluminium, it's a metal, it's got quite a sharp edge, and as you can see it can give you a mean paper cut, so just watch out for it. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fit the LED lights, the strip lights anyway. I'm going to stick them to the bottom of each light box. I'm going to find where the cable holes are, and I'm just going to poke little holes in the foil so I can get the cables out of the light box and up into the top box. And then I'm going to solder a cable extension with a heat shrink over the join on each LED and get each LED set of leads up into the top box. Now all the LEDs have got their extension leads, all the leads are in the top box. All that remains now is to fit them to the terminal block in the correct polarity. Now I have tried to keep a consistent theme throughout. I've tried to make sure that all the reds are negative and all the blacks are positive. But the way I'm going to do this isn't really going to make any difference. So what I've done is I've actually plugged in the power supply and it's switched on. I've made sure the switch is in the on position, and I'm going to connect them live, and as I go through I'll just keep playing with the polarity until the light comes on. Let's do it. Right, so there endeth the electronics part of the assembly process. All the lights are on, the switch works, we're ready to seal everything up, put the signs in, put the windows on, hang the doors, fit the back, and we're finished.